Hello again. Well, what I've got here at the bottom is the Amstrad 5050 vintage stereo receiver, and I do sort of slightly collect Amstrad stuff, and so I've been looking out for this. But it was also mentioned a couple of times in the comments that I might like to try this. So to be clear, this isn't turning into a request show, but so I thought, oh, okay, I'll give it a go. So. It took a while for you to get here because the chap said that well, I haven't got a box big enough, and I thought he was sort of, just storing. But the thing is massive. So here I'm going to comparing it to this, the JVC JRS50, which is out at about the same time. And you can see, there's quite a considerable difference. This is very long and thin, and this is, more sort of, I think, compact and certainly easier to have probably in a house. Anyway, it came in pretty good condition, as you can see. All the lights work, which wasn't the case in the JVC, and importantly, it came with quite a good condition manual, which isn't always the case. And particularly important because, as you can see, it's also not short of controls. So what have we got here? So up here you got the usual bass, middle, treble, balance. And there's a panorama control, and that basically turns it to between sort of stereo and mono, and any sort of stage in between, and the volume. Over here you've got the power switch, you've got a quietness switch, which seems to just drop it by 20 decibels between the phone rings. You've got 2 filters for scratch and 2 for rumble. So scratch is sort of a high filter, and rumble is a low filter. And if you look, it can be 30, 70 or 100 kilohertz. You can set them for the rumble, and 7 10 or 17 kilohertz for the high filter. So when you think of it, if you put both of those in, then you're taking everything out below 100 hertz and everything out above 7 kilohertz. So that's quite a bit of the frequency spectrum gone when you think about it. It's certainly noticeable when you listen to it. You got a loudness control. You got a high blend control. High blend, as I understand it, basically, if you've got a problem with the stereo FM reception, it kind of blends the high frequencies. You've got a more problem getting through, as far as I know, to make it a better signal, and you get a bit of stereo. You got a muting thing, which is for the when you're tuning FM, so you don't get sort of the white noise or whatever it is, but also it cuts at some of the lower stations, so you just get the high strength stations. You've got a tape monitor, tape correct, and that basically means that when you're recording something, it goes through the tone controls rather than just straight out, which normally happens. Long wave, medium wave, FM, aux, phono, AFC, helps keep the thing stable when you're tuning into FM, and here you've got a tuning control. So they've thrown the kitchen sink at it at the with the controls and options. Around the back, everything is DIN switches. So you've got 2-pin DIN switches for the everything's DIN sockets. So you've got 2-pin DIN sockets for the speakers, 5-pin DIN for phono and everything. So I think the first thing that struck me is that kind of when you compared it to the sort of which is the sort of stuff that Japan was making at about sort of the same time in the late to mid 70s, this looks a generation beforehand. And this isn't necessarily an Amstrad thing. If you look at things that were done by Goodman's or Armstrong, they had the same form factor, but it generally feels kind of quite old-fashioned, particularly with the sort of the sort of plastic controls, or these are aluminium. It's got this sort of, some might think it's quite garish colour scheme, because we've got blue, orange and green, whereas this would doesn't work at the moment, but it would have been also a nice light blue. Now I quite like this because it kind of reminds me of my old grandfather's radio, and he used to listen to it and had the station had like Hilversum and things, which I never heard of. I used to like trying to tune into them, get the foreign stations when I was very young. But I think in the late 70s I'd have thought that this was a bit naff looking compared to this. Also kind of reminds me of the car we used to have. I remember we used to have an Austin 1300, which again was my grandfather's car. We used to drive it around in, and even then I thought, well, this looks a bit naff. Particularly my kind of best friend he had a lot more money than me, his family did, and he was driving a Ford Capri, and I was certainly aware that I was driving the car that Basil Fawlty was giving a good hiding to, while he was driving the car that Bodie and Doyle, if you remember them, used to drive around in. Anyway, sound quality was quite interesting. I spent a lot of time listening to this primarily through the tuner, because I do like listening to it to classical music late at night from Classic FM or Radio 3, and it sounds good actually. In fact, it sounds more balanced than this, which I think is a bit of a warm sound. So I was quite surprised I preferred listening to this than this. I also tried listening to the other sockets. The phono seemed to be okay. When I put it to the aux socket, I was using my Dragonfly Cobalt, and it just sounded dreadful. I think it sort of overloaded it, because when I look in the technical specifications here, it says the auxiliary socket 70 megavolts to 300 megavolts sensitivity, and I know that Dragonfly Cobalt puts out 2.1 volts, so I think I just overloaded it. I tried it with a tape socket as well, and that was a bit better, because you can adjust the sort of the sensitivity of the tape and the input, and that was certainly better. But it did seem to have a kind of a drop in the mid-range, which the phone had a bit, and I think that's actually probably a fault, a capacitor or something going, because it certainly wasn't the case for the tuner, which, as I say, I preferred to the JVC, which I was a bit surprised about, given that I'd always thought that Amstrad was kind of a bargain basement thing. I had liked their tuners, but actually I think that's wrong, because I don't think this is a bargain basement thing, because what I've got here is I've got my HiFi news and record review from 1977, and if I look in the advert for Maconomy Hi-Fi, it says that if I look in tuner amplifiers, well, the cheapest one is an Alba 1500, £74. But actually, no, that's not true. The cheapest tuner amplifier is a Sanyo OCX 1850, £64.94. The Sanyo OCX 2000, £79.94. Then there's the Alba. Then you've got Pioneer SX300, £69.94. The Rotel RX 102 Mark II, £79.94. And then you kind of get to this at £89.50. So, unlike the Amstrad 8000 I listened to before, this is, not half the price of everything else. This is in fact slightly more than what you might call recognised Japanese makes. And indeed, I haven't been able to get this. I've been looking at the old Hi-Fi news and record review sites and things, and you can download a lot of them. But on the anniversary edition, they look at 3 receivers. It's in 77, and they looked at a JVC, they looked at Technics, and they looked at this. So clearly, Amstrad had given off to Hi-Fi news and record review, which you remember is the kind of the chin-stroking proper end of Hi-Fi, rather than the what Hi-Fi I used to listen to. So they clearly had a lot of faith in it, and overall, I really like listening to it, particularly the receiver, and I'm I'm going to keep on doing it. And that really rather surprised me. Now, a bit of me would like to set up a vintage system, and I don't think I'm going to use it for that, because it's certainly not as good as my NAD stuff I've got, so the amplifiers. But I might well use a tuner section for this, because I think I do like the retro aesthetic. So overall, tuner reception and amplification's fine. Other amplification bit down the mid-range, but I think that's a capacitor problem. Difficult to use with modern technology unless you've got some form of attenuator or something. But yeah, I like it. So anyway, so next up, I think I might be doing some vintage headphones to go with my vintage system. So if you're interested in that, subscribe. Otherwise, thanks for watching.